AI cannot replace the electricity that's transmitted when humans gather in a room together. There's this connection, and a French sociologist coined it as collective effervescence. That's the energy that we feel during group rituals. It could be a religious event, it could be a sports event when you're watching that game and everyone is on their feet waiting for that last pitch of the inning. We all feel that collective effervescence. That's uniquely human, and it's that bonding element of community and connection that's actually allowed us to survive and thrive as a species. So it's fundamental to what it means to be human. And that's why, as we start to adopt AI more into our lives and into our decisions and into how we show up, it's the human to human connection that your avatar can't create, that my avatar can't create. Perhaps it can help enhance a feeling of connection to the source human, but the avatar in and of itself, as far as I've seen so far, cannot create that sense of collective effervescence. And so leaders need to be aware of this, because their job is to create this shared connection, either in a room during a speech or every day by way of the culture of their organization. That's fundamentally human. We use AI as tools and perhaps as teammates in order to be more efficient and more effective, but it's in collaboration with, or in coordination with, alongside the human to human connection that fuels us as a species.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of our Beneficial General Intelligence series on the Mindplex podcast. Today, we are joined by Allison Shapira, who is a world renowned advisor on leadership, communication, and authenticity in an age of rapid change. Along the years, Allison has helped leaders from Prime Minister and Fortune 100 CEOs to emerging entrepreneurs to find their voice, build trust, and lead with clarity and confidence. She is the founder and CEO of Global Public Speaking, a Harvard Kennedy School lecturer, and the author of the Washington Post best-selling book, Speak with Impact. Well, I don't have that book, but I have her newest book, AI for the Authentic Leader: How to Communicate More Effectively Without Losing Your Humanity. And as you can see, the word authentic is really, really in capitals here. And so, first of all, welcome to the podcast, Alison. And I want to mention to our audience that you are also, by now, a member of our Beneficial General Intelligence movement, which needs a lot of authenticity. So, let's start with that. What is authenticity to you? And if you can frame it in the context of your career and life path, because I think that's a topic which follows all of us along our life path. So introduce yourself in this context, please.
It's such a pleasure to join you, Mihaela, and to be here on this podcast, especially starting with the concept of authenticity. And there are many definitions of authenticity, from true to the original, so the authenticity of a document or a video. I actually use the definition speaking and acting in alignment with your values and beliefs. So, authenticity is when we speak and act in a way that's in alignment with who we really are and what we truly believe. And what I have seen advising executives in all industries for about 23 years is that authenticity, by that definition, is one of the most important tools, or attributes, I should say, by which a leader builds trust with their peers, with their organization, with their constituents and external stakeholders. So it's not just a buzzword. It's critical if we want to be effective as leaders or as individual contributors in any role.
And your life path, which brought you to this, to stress authenticity and to notice this, if you can tell us a
Right.
bit about that.
I'm happy to. My career started out training to be an opera singer. So my first performance experience was on stage performing opera in front of hundreds, thousands of people. And actually, that was not what taught me about authenticity. It is in the sense that in order to effectively demonstrate emotion, we have to feel that emotion. But at the end of the day, opera singers are interpreting something someone else wrote. And it wasn't until many years later that I became a folk singer and songwriter, in addition to my career advising leaders, where I realized it was folk music that actually brought out my authentic voice, because folk singers are authentically themselves when they go out on stage. They're not trying to pretend to interpret someone else's voice, or pretending they're not interpreting someone else's voice. They're being themselves unapologetically. And it was that learning journey that I was on musically for really 30 years, since I started singing opera. And then there was a parallel between that and the way I was advising my clients, because when I first started advising leaders coming from a performance background, I was teaching them how to perform in front of an audience. And there's an element of performance, but deep down, our executive presence is really tapping into who we are, what we believe in, and then having the courage to live those values out loud. And how that has evolved now is, now my work is focused on advising leaders one on one or in their entire organization, to help make it safe for people to bring out and tap into their authentic voice, not just because it feels good, but because it makes you a more effective leader. It drives business results within the organization. And that's why I focus on authentic communication as authentic leadership, in order to drive results within an organization, public, private, nonprofit. And that's why authenticity is so important to me, because I see it work again and again as a way to be more effective and more fulfilled in the work that we do.
Yes, and I can, relate, of course, and also with our CEO, Dr. Ben Gertel, who you saw on Tuesday performing in a way, but being himself. Yes, he most of the time wears his hat and so on, and that's part of the performance. But he is always unapologetically himself, and but there are Huh. More often than not, yes, we don't really know who we are. And I'm just wondering, especially in a world where technology can both amplify and obscure our voice, um, there are a lot of dangers in this regard. So, is your work also helping people, helping your clients discover their inner voice, their inner clarity, their not only performance but who really are and what is their authentic self?
You're so right, because what I realized, what I've come to understand over time, is that the way you communicate with others starts with how you communicate with yourself. What's the voice that you use to talk to yourself? So sometimes people will come to me for a very transactional need. I'm giving a high stakes presentation in a month, and I need your help both preparing the content and helping me build my presence in the delivery. But what we realize is the language you use, the way in which you present yourself, starts with how you feel about yourself. Because so often, whether we have imposter syndrome or we can't get out of our own way because of the environment we work in, there's a lot of internal work to do, which is why I call it leadership communication, because it informs how you show up in a leadership role. So there's a lot of work to do to uncover, and uncover is the right word, because everyone has an authentic voice, and they've covered it up intentionally or unintentionally, especially after years in a work environment. And maybe that's for good reason. Maybe in your current or past environment, it wasn't safe to be authentic. And many times in large corporations, where the culture is just be yourself, what they really mean is just be like everyone else. or be like how we expect you to be based on our assumptions of who you are. So there's a lot of nuance. And I'd also add to this, and it's a critical point, authenticity isn't always a good thing. You can be authentically lazy. You can be authentically verbose. I'm authentically impatient when people waste my time. It is not my best leadership quality. In fact, it can cause me to say and do things that are counterproductive to the kind of results and culture I want to achieve. And so when I teach authenticity and help people uncover it, I talk about it as being you at your best, not just you at your rough, unprepared, in your showing up, you in your pajamas may be authentic, but it's not effective. And so increasingly, I'm starting to talk about strategic authenticity. If you imagine a Venn diagram where in one circle you have your authentic self, and then in the other circle you have what's effective for this situation, for this audience, for this industry. And the overlap of those two circles is your strategic authenticity. You're not pretending, you're simply highlighting the best attributes that you have, which are going to be most effective in this situation and with this audience. And that's why I spend a lot of time with clients searching for that overlap so that they can both feel good and be effective in whatever it is they're trying to achieve in their business or in their organization.
Yes, and amazing. Many points here. Yes, because indeed, yes, and I of course experienced this as well when I was awarded several research chairs and so on from the Prime Minister, from X and Y, and working in high stakes environment as well. Of course, you identify yourself with the role so many times, and sometimes you can really lose yourself by this identification with the role, with the head, if I may, because I just mentioned Dr. Ben Goertzel's wearing the hat when he is in the role, yes, of CEO and so on. He is literally wearing the hat, so everybody knows he is in the role, although he is authentic. So, but it felt painful at times, indeed, when I really had to impersonate that whatever people expected of me in that position, in that role. However, I also wanted to ask you as a woman and also as a lecturer at Harvard, because authenticity, as you also sometimes mentioned, that is like, people can see my soul naked. It is also associated with a sort of vulnerability, and it can, right? I mean, it can be exploited. And to me, it happened many times, especially as if you teach technical people, computer science, they are mainly guys, and you a blonde lady teaching there, and so you have to keep a certain rigidity, a certain distance. Can you talk about this a bit, and maybe if you have any personal experience with that? Vulnerability, role, authenticity, that's the triangle I want you to cover.
It's such an important point. And that's why I had to develop this concept of strategic authenticity, because on the one side, you have who you are. On the other side, what's going to be effective with this audience? It could be regional. Are you speaking to an audience of New Yorkers or Southerners? And you may have different styles that you bring out. When I'm speaking to New Yorkers, my parents are from New York, my New York sarcasm comes out. And then when I'm somewhere else that doesn't appreciate New York sarcasm, if that comes out, then I'm alienating my audience. And I will say I have done that before, and it's worked against me. So that's one example. It's not gender related. And you asked a really important question about gender. And the research shows this double bind that women are in, especially women in leadership, but it could be women in really in any traditionally male role. And so the double bind is when women act in a way that's perceived as feminine, then they're viewed as authentic. Now, again, there's research showing sometimes authenticity is something the audience bestows upon us when it views us as acting in alignment with their expectations of what authentic would be to us. That sounds kind of complex, but it's looking at authenticity as perceived through someone else's assumptions. And so that's a challenge that women face. So if you act feminine, then you're viewed as authentic to your gender, but you're viewed as unfit for leadership because those aren't the characteristics associated with leadership. But then if you act in a traditionally male way, and I grew up with three brothers, so I have this, this response to good-natured bullying that I step into. When you act in a way that's traditionally male, then you're viewed as inauthentic. Or so if you're trying to act like a leader, then you can be viewed as inauthentic and even unlikable as a result of it. So there's a lot of nuance to it. And so I'm simply naming in a high level, there's an additional challenge for women in this role when authenticity takes different forms. And that's why, again, that strategic authenticity is about, okay, based on what I perceive to be my audience's biases against me, how do I want to show up with intention? And then you're in charge of how you show up, as opposed to just being buffeted by the winds of audience expectations.
So one really, if I may put it this way, has to make an effort to show up with intention and authentically. It's not like, oh, if I'm authentic, it just comes by itself. I just show you my soul and you will be happy. That is very, very big, light bulb for many, I'm
Exactly.
sure, for me definitely as well, because there is a balance, yes, and this is kind of the fine line, as I was mentioning, yes, between making ourselves vulnerable for no reason, and evaluating the audience and actually showing ourselves, that part of ourselves, yes, with the intention of what we want to convey to that audience. And I very much appreciate that. So I'd like to move now to the AI part of the
Yes.
book, because they are so interrelated, of course, with authenticity. And your book starts with this from this. I mean, I think it's all grounded in this powerful tension that AI can either amplify a leader's voice or quietly replace it. And this is such a big danger in the era of generative AI. Even and I have to say, yes, and I will give you this example. That was quite funny, actually. It was a few years ago when generative AI was not that spread, but I found myself on an AI panel in Davos, and the moderator brought a GPT with them, and the GPT was co-panelist with us. And I was asked a question from my work, and then the GPT answered better than me from my own work, right? Like, because I don't remember what I wrote on page X 10 years ago. And it's like, oh. So I really felt somehow, oh my God, am I so replaceable? But anyway, this is just a story. Please let us know what's your opinion about the dangers of AI to a leader's voice in our day and age.
Generative AI can be very dangerous for a leader's voice. It can also be incredibly empowering for a leader's voice. And I come at this, as you know, not from the background of a technologist or a scientist. I'm a trained opera singer and turned entrepreneur. I'm not focused on the scientific background, but I've been studying AI for 8 years on the outside looking in, and then using AI over the past 5 years as a way of helping leaders improve at first their public speaking skills, and then realizing AI could go even deeper. Now, with generative AI, we could go even deeper into bringing out authenticity. So the danger is leaders right now are either not using AI at all because they're afraid of it and they don't understand it, or they're over relying on it. And we're doing the research right now to understand what the implications of that are. But recent studies, including one from mid 2025, showed that when supervisors over relied on AI in their communication, their subordinates viewed them as less confident, less knowledgeable, and less genuine. And the study goes into when is it more or less acceptable to use AI. And for those personal communications from a supervisor, when they bring in AI, it works against them, especially when they over rely on it and it's obvious. And so the challenge is, if leaders want to build trust, which is a critical necessity in order to be an effective leader, if you're bringing in AI and over relying on it, you're undermining trust at the very time at which you need it the most. Because so many employees are worried about AI replacing their jobs, changing their jobs, about being left behind. And those are valid worries. It's not hyperbole. Like it will happen in many industries. And so now is the time for leaders to double down on the trust that they have between them and their employees. And this is any sector. This could be the leader of a country with their citizens. Now's the time to double down on that trust, because there's so much uncertainty and change ahead. We need these bonds of trust in order to follow our leaders, in order for leaders to be effective at implementing the kind of change they believe is best. So there's so much nuance here. We could dive into any of these components. The point here is, you can use AI in a way that builds trust. I just talked about ways that reduce that trust, but in the book, my goal is to give leaders easy actions that they can take today in order to use generative AI in a way that increases trust and increases authenticity. And the book, as you've seen, it's under 100 pages for a reason. It's because busy leaders don't have time to read a 400-page book that they need to implement right away. I want them to be able to read it on a quick 2-hour direct flight and immediately put it into practice as soon as they land.
And that's what I did. And at page 37, guess what? I found the AI authenticity loop, which you actually are, and because you mentioned it's okay if we dive in a bit,
Yes,
I hope you don't mind if we reveal a few things from the book. I hope it will
please.
only make the leaders more curious. So, can you walk us maybe through this loop using a real example, if you can, or I mean, real example, made up example or whatever, but just so we understand what is this AI authenticity loop and how it works.
Yes. And I developed this loop recognizing we want frameworks. We want clear steps. Step one, step two. What do I do? And how do I bring AI into the process? That's why I developed this loop. And I use the term loop because, as you know, there's this concept of keeping the human in the loop in order to ensure accountability and alignment. Now, the point I make in the book is that it's not about keeping the human in the loop. The human is the loop, and we bring in AI strategically around that process. That's how you maintain your authenticity. That's how you build trust. So the first step in the AI authenticity loop starts with you having an idea, jotting down your thoughts. And there's a lot of trying to think about how to say this. The phrase that I love that I've heard from a lot of speechwriters is that writing is thinking. And so when you outsource that first step to ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, whatever language model you're using, you're outsourcing your thought process, which reduces the impact of your words. So, step one, it has to start with you identifying the need for a speech or a message. As you know, I'm going to Davos in a week. By the time people see this, we will be back. But let's say I'm preparing a speech for Davos. Step one, I'm going to jot down my ideas. Who's my audience? What's my goal? Why do I care about this? What do I want to say? I'll write that down myself, whether on paper or on the screen. Step two, I'll bring in AI as a thought partner, as a brainstorming assistant. How might I take this message and make it more global? Does it have too much of an American centric focus? In Davos, I'm going to meet people from different sectors. How can I cater this message for someone from the public sector, for someone from the private sector? With my book, I took the text of the book, put it into a language model, and then said, simulate feedback from someone who's against technology. How can I make this book more relatable to someone? Now imagine if you knew the Myers-Briggs personality style of the person you were trying to communicate to. Help me communicate this message to someone who has this score or that score. So the AI becomes a brainstorming partner. Now, could you use a human for this? Absolutely. But that human might not always be available, and you might not have enough humans for that type of feedback. And you might be doing this, let's be honest, the night before the presentation when the humans you had already hired to help you are asleep. So this is very practical. So that's step 2. We bring in AI to brainstorm and ask questions and get feedback. Step 3, we come back in and evaluate the AI suggestions. And we evaluate it by 2 criteria. First, is it authentic? Does it pass the billboard test? Which means if this message were on a billboard over the highway in my hometown next to my name and face, would I be proud of it? And the second criteria is accuracy. As you know, language models can fabricate information. So anything that it comes back with, we have to check, because ultimately you are responsible for the words that come out of your mouth or from your email address. So that's step 3, bringing the human back in to critically evaluate what the AI came up with. Step 4 is using AI again for feedback after you've further refined and written your message. And it's not just about brainstorming, you can actually role play with the voice mode of most of these models in order to speak it out loud and get feedback based on how you've actually spoken it. Because we know the words sound different when they come out of our mouths than they do rolling around in our head or even on paper. Because it's through speaking something out loud that we determine whether something is made, if it's written for the eye or the ear. And this is especially important if you have to have a difficult conversation. You can role play your difficult conversation with a language model and ask it to simulate different outcomes based on different personality traits and to give you feedback on how effectively you live your values when having that difficult conversation. Because you have taught the AI your values using the techniques that I raise in the book. And then the 5th and final step is you come back in, you deliver the message in person, virtually, to one person, to 1,000 people. I would deliver this message at Davos, and my human audience would receive that message, be inspired by that message, come up with their own new ideas, and then they use the AI authenticity loop, and it starts all over again. That's the process. It works for a speech. It works for a conversation. It works if you're preparing for a networking event and want to make sure you come across as credible and authentic. It's easy to use and you're in charge. Ultimately, you're also responsible for everything that you say or do as a result of this.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That is really so comprehensive example that definitely I'm sure everybody has got it. And I have several adjacent questions emerging from this. But first, some comments. So, first of all, yes, very soon, though, the AI will be able to help us identify on the spot, of course, if we want to reveal that. So that the others would know the type of personality, so they know how to how to approach us, and this may enable more communication, less confusion, and less conflict. So we can align with others much easier and better. Then AI, however, you say I have to come back with my voice. But sometimes, I mean, you see, I'm from Romania, I have an accent. Maybe AI can have, a sexier voice, a better voice than me, a better accent, a more appealing voice. And even if I create the message or I co-create it with the AI, what's your take on that? Would that still be authentic if the voice is not necessarily mine and the accent is much more appealing?
It's such a great question. And I will tell you, everyone will answer this question differently. Because if you define authenticity as true to the original, then that voice is not yours. It's not your beautiful, wonderful accent. Now, could you spend time adjusting your accent so that you could reduce the accent if you wanted to? And it's called accent modification. We don't call it accent reduction, but it's modification because there's also real research showing that when people have heavy foreign accents, now yours is not heavy, but very heavy foreign accents, they can be perceived as less knowledgeable, which is a bias, and it's obviously incorrect because you probably are more knowledgeable than most people because of the number of languages you speak. That's an American, I would say, bias in the way that we perceive foreign language speakers. And I hate the fact that that shows up. But what I'm saying is, if you wanted to change your accent, you could. Would you still be authentic? Now, if you define authenticity as true to your values and beliefs, then of course you're authentic. It doesn't matter whether your voice has an accent or doesn't have an accent. The issue is, can you be understood? If you can be understood, great. If you can't be understood, it doesn't have to be a foreign accent, it could be a regional accent getting in the way of you being understood. Okay, let's solve for that. I have a game that I play when I speak different languages. My goal is for nobody to know where I'm from when I speak that language. It's, that's my goal. Go ahead. And I can, the point is, we get to define what authenticity means to us. And everyone is going to answer that question in a different place. Is it you at your best? Is it you at your most aspirational? Or is it you as you are? I can't answer that question. And it's really going to depend on the audience as well. But you raise a critical point that we should be discussing more. And I'd be interested to hear what your response is to that question.
No, I can only share my experience because, I mean, you say that I don't have a heavy accent, but the first question which everybody is asking me, but absolutely everybody here in the US, yes, when they meet me for the first time, is where are you from? It's not like, what do you do, or what's your life, or how is your
Right,
day? Is where are
right,
you from, the first question. And I'm like,
right.
oh, they picked on my accent. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
great. And it's
Right.
getting frustrating. And I want to
I
say that
understand.
in my career, yes, which is very successful, as you know, I mean, I relied on writing, and many times I have hundreds of publications peer reviewed, and many times when the reviews come back, it's like with he. They think I'm a man, and it's like always great, glowing reviews. And I'm like, okay, great. I'm so happy I don't have a blonde head with an accent because I'm being finally evaluated at face, for my work, not with the biases which you mentioned. So I have to say that my experience is that uh, this bias is pretty big, and I have a problem with it. And therefore, I'm thinking maybe for me uh, like I don't want to say necessarily a sexy voice, a competent voice without an accent may help, but we can talk about that later. And of course, there are many applications. We have one with Twin Protocol, in which I am speaking, and if you go there, you will find my twin there. And I can send my twin to give the lecture, on, especially when it is online and on Zoom or something like that. I prepare it, and then the twin is just delivering. But it's okay. If you have to say something there, that's fine. We can move on, though. If I don't expect you to sort things out now in this regard, but
Well,
it's onundred though.
a quick point that I'll make about that, because I'm also experimenting with building my own digital twin that I can then share with clients when I'm unavailable. What I do see as a coming trend is that attention equals importance. So when you send your digital twin to deliver a lecture, what it's saying is, you're not important enough for me to be there in person, or in reality, because I can't visit you because I'm visiting with someone else, which means they're more important. So there's a difference in the way in which we set it up, as in, I couldn't be here because I had a prior obligation. Here's the next best thing. But is it as powerful as you saying, you are so important that I'm going to cancel my other obligation and speak to you? And I want people to recognize that when they do send an avatar of themselves, it's maybe it's better than nothing, but it won't be better than the human saying, I'm here for you.
Yes, and in that regard, also, yes, some studies suggest this real paradox that being transparent about using AI can lower trust, but hiding it can backfire badly if people find out. So, I'm sending my avatar, but people were not supposed to know that is not me. That's my point. I mean, it's like, okay,
Oh, I
yes,
see.
that's
Right,
even
right.
worse,
I
right?
don't
Ah!
Right.
Tell me,
That I
tell me.
I don't I don't recommend that, because the trust issue is going to be so critical. I do think this mistrust of AI right now, when we know someone used it, is going to go away as within, I can't predict, but I think within a few years we're going to stop questioning whether someone used AI to write something, because we're going to assume they used their own personal AI assistant that's grounded in their voice and their values, which is using the tools I recommend in the book, but I recommend them because they're not commercially automatically available to you. Once we have our own personal AI assistant that is trained or grounded in our voice, then everything we write or communicate is going to have an AI filter through it, and nobody's going to be questioning it, because it's like, did you use spell check before you sent it? Of course I did, because I wanted the grammar to be correct. So this is a temporary adjustment of expectations as we go through this transition in society.
So, but how much should we use it? Also, that's another question because I mean, should I rewrite whatever the AI comes up with? Of course, I check it for correctness and so on. It uses my work or whatever I tell it. But should I rewrite it so it's still from my voice? And I'm asking this because there's emerging research which is actually showing that while AI can make messages more polished, they can also reduce trust because I mean, if I do not rewrite it more like in my voice, it's like it can be detected. It's not me or something like that. What do you have to say there? There's a fine line. How
There's a
much
very
can we
fine line.
use it?
And the answer is, it depends. It depends on how personal the message is supposed to be. When my mother used ChatGPT to write me an email about how much she loved me and what a great daughter I was, and then at the very end, she wrote, ChatGPT wrote it, but it's all true. I it for me, and I love her. We have a very close relationship. When I read that, it immediately diminished the the value of that letter, not of her love, but of that message. And so that for me was a fine line. I would rather have a shorter, poorly written but authentically written love letter from my mother than I would a longer, more polished AI. So it depends on the level of personalization in that relationship. And also whether, and by the opposite, then, if it's a more standard communication, if it's a company message being communicated down from the organization, it might not require as much personalization. And that's where AI can be much easier to implement. So it's really depending on the relationship and on the nature of the correspondence that lets you know, as an indicator, how much to lean on generative AI versus how much to ensure it's in your own voice.
So, and in let's say in work instances, like when you write an apology or you have a conflict or gratitude or, layoff situations, sometimes, people prefer to use AI or at least to consult with AI. How should I break this news to my coworker? So, what do you think? Should we use AI then, or we should still be? Are you still authentic when we are using AI in those difficult moments?
Yes, I think you should consider using it, and yes, you can still be authentic if you use the framework in the way that I recommend, because sometimes AI can bring out your best self when you're at your worst. And this is one of the steps, or one of the methods I recommend in my book. AI can help you tap into a sense of empathy that you may not be feeling in the moment because you're angry at your coworker or you're angry at your employee. Like, again, how many times do I have to tell you to follow the process this way? Again, you didn't do it. And your instinct is to say, are you kidding me? Not the most effective leadership tool. So you can put that message into AI, into an AI tool, and say, here are the values I'm trying to uphold. It's really hard for me to do this right now. Help me make this message more empathetic. And we see for several years, we've seen research showing that AI can demonstrate more empathy than humans. And there's this fascinating study of doctors responding to patient questions on social media and comparing the doctor's responses to the AI chatbot responses to those same questions. And the chatbots were rated higher for knowledge and empathy than the doctors. And that's because doctors are busy. We're all busy. And so AI can be this gentle, patient nudge of who we are and who we want to be at our best. And the AI can prompt us to be better humans when we're really at our worst. And that's why I believe it can be such a powerful tool for good that can actually enhance human connection because it keeps you from screwing it up.
Amazing. Yes, it is so true. So it can really be a tool to let's say to keep us on track and give us perspective when we are blinded by emotions and in
Exactly.
situations like this. So, but let me push it now or turn the coin on the other side because I really, of course, we here and the audience we love AI. Yes, and all what you said is music to our ears. But let's push it to the limit. Where is AI really not useful? And I think there's something which I found in your book, like reading the room, right? AI cannot do that. So, what are the most common ways leaders misread rooms today? And what simple habits can help them stay connected to people instead of script slides or AI drafts?
Right. And reading the room is such a nuanced question because very often humans misread the room because they're either not paying attention to the reaction of the audience, they're just stuck in their own head, maybe because they're nervous or maybe because they're really passionate and they go off on a tangent and they're not paying attention to how their audience is responding. Or, on the other hand, leaders can misread the room by misinterpreting the audience member's body language. So perhaps someone crossing their arms and frowning could just be listening intently, or it could signal that someone's cold. If everyone's going like this, you think your audience mistrusts you, but actually they're really cold because the temperature needs to be regulated. So we can either not pay enough attention or we can pay too much attention to the to reading the room. Now the challenge with AI is that AI could read the room much more effectively than a human. But in order to do that, it would need to gather so much personal information on the humans. I do not agree with that kind of use. And I'll give you a simple an example from sales. There are a lot of AI tools to make sales professionals more effective in their sales calls, but where they cross the line, in my opinion, is doing sentiment analysis on the voice and behavior of the prospect. And I believe that's intrusive. My emotion when you're trying to pitch me or convince me of something should be private to me. I believe that's my privacy right, that my emotion, I should I should be able to show, like, to make the decision to show you, as opposed to having you read my vocal quality and read my body temperature and my heart rate, yes, you can read me effectively, but that is intrusive and manipulative. And as you know from the book and from the article that I just wrote for the World Economic Forum, superhuman persuasion with AI is, I believe, to be one of the greatest dangers to society presently.
And we will put a link to the article, of course, in the podcast description for our audience to also enjoy it. And I want to say that I completely agree with you. And this is actually what drove Dr. Ben Goertzel to start SingularityNet, because we are flipping this centralized AI paradigm on its head. So SingularityNet is enabling everybody through technology, through blockchain and some technical tricks which only we know how to do, the secret sauce which we have in our platform, to actually keep our data. Yes, we keep our data private and encrypted, and then we can also share, but only what we want. So if I really want that my boss, or the AI can read me, so I am being addressed exactly in my issues and so on and so forth, then I can share certain parts of whatever I want to. So the human, the individual, can stay in control, so we can have the cake and eat it too. We can keep our privacy, but also we can enable the AI to gather data from me, from you, from everybody in the room, and then amalgamate it so that, let's say, the CEO or those, let's say, the partners who are coming to do a partnership can also have a view of the room and what they can expect if we want to do that. But I wanted to, go again further on this, let's say, flipped coin with the limits of AI, because your background in music is very relevant here. And, music is a teacher of presence and connection. And of course, you know this much better than us. You cannot fake listening, because if you are not attuned to other musicians, the performance collapses. So, what does music actually teach us about human connection that leaders urgently need to remember in an AI mediated world?
I'm so glad you asked about that, because as we think about what can AI replace and what can AI not replace, AI cannot replace the electricity that's transmitted when humans gather in a room together. There's this connection, and a French sociologist coined it as collective effervescence. That's the energy that we feel during group rituals. It could be a religious event, it could be a sports event when you're watching that game and everyone is on their feet waiting for that last pitch of the inning. We all feel that collective effervescence. That's uniquely human, and it's that bonding element of community and connection that's actually allowed us to survive and thrive as a species. So it's fundamental to what it means to be human. And that's why, as we start to adopt AI more into our lives and into our decisions and into how we show up, it's the human to human connection that your avatar can't create, that my avatar can't create. Perhaps it can help enhance a feeling of connection to the source human, but the avatar in and of itself, as far as I've seen so far, cannot create that sense of collective effervescence. And so leaders need to be aware of this, because their job is to create this shared connection, either in a room during a speech or every day by way of the culture of their organization. That's fundamentally human. We use AI as tools and perhaps as teammates in order to be more efficient and more effective, but it's in collaboration with, or in coordination with, alongside the human to human connection that fuels us as a species.
Amazing. And of course, some call this coherence, and it would be so amazing. I had a round of three podcasts with the two scientists whom I met at the Science of Consciousness conference, and they are like really anesthesiologists and psychologists and all these, deep sciences. And they came to the same conclusion that indeed there's this vibration between us, and we have to become more aware of that and foster it, and they call that coherent. But when you said collective effervescence, I'm like, I feel myself with that kind of energy. It's amazing, very powerful. If you had to give leaders, let's say, three don'ts for this era, or maybe one, maybe not three communication habits, one communication habit that inflame instability, mistrust in AI, and so on and so forth. What are those that would build rather, uh, mistrust than trust? Or you can tell us the other way, what are three do's that can build more social trust under pressure?
Mhm. Let me start with what to do, and then I'll share what not to do. In terms of what to do immediately, before you communicate any message, put it into an AI, a language model, whichever one you use, and ask it to identify the jargon in your message. That's an easy thing that you can do. And that's the first step that I recommend in the book is have it identify the jargon, because we have so much jargon and acronyms all around us. I Well, and also you have to tell it who your audience is as well, because if the audience understands the jargon, it's less of an issue. But when we use jargon, our words lose their meaning and power. So an easy first step is have the AI find the jargon. Don't necessarily ask it to reword the jargon, because sometimes based on the generative nature of the model, it may suggest words that are even more jargony than the original jargon, at least at this point with your average unground model that hasn't been grounded in your voice. So that's one immediate step. I would also, for leaders who aren't using AI, and I know so many people listening to your podcast are experts, they're scientists, they're very advanced. The audiences I'm speaking to the most are the ones who are mistrustful of AI or fearful. And what I tell them to do is identify a pressing challenge that you have coming up. Maybe it's at work, maybe it's with your spouse. And I want you to ask AI how AI could help you with that challenge. Say, here's what I'm struggling with. How can you help me? And it's a curiosity based way of dipping your toe in the water of understanding how generative AI could be a thought partner to you. And those are two easy steps anyone can take. The first one I recommend more for the technical audience, and the second one is for the non-technical audience. Now, in terms of, and I'll also mention in my book, I have a chatbot I created to help people find their authentic voice. And there's a download that people can use. So if they go to my website, which is allisonshapira.com/AI, they'll be able to download a one page resource guide based on the book, which includes this authenticity GPT that I created for them to use.
Amazing. And do you have one don't do?
Yes. Well, beyond the obvious, don't put your credit card or social security information into the AI. There's so many don'ts as well. Like it's hard to think. The most immediate is do not simply copy and paste what it comes up with, put it in an email and send it. A colleague of mine, Terry Brock, he's another speaker who speaks about AI, and he likes to say copy, paste, customize. And I love the simplicity of that. Do not just copy and paste. That is a lazy and ineffective way of using AI. It takes, just like authenticity takes intention, AI use takes intention as well.
Amazing. And you gave us so many good practices with which we can start today, right away, yes,
That's right.
to use AI and your chatbot, I think, especially. Thank you so much. And we will put the links to your website and chatbot, I mean, words on your website, just pointers, so the audience can access it very easily. So I think we can close this conversation here, unless you want to have some last message. But for me, this like the practices and let's get started would be a perfect.
Mhm. That's right.
Uh,
The closing message is that AI can be a tool to make us the best versions of ourselves that we could ever have been. It can help us tap into our memories. It can help us bring forth who we aspire to be and help us be more fulfilled and more authentic if we use it intentionally and effectively. And that's what I want people to do, is to use it intentionally and to help others use it intentionally, because there's going to be an enormous period of upheaval and transition unless we give everyone the tools to make this transition together. Otherwise, as Condoleezza Rice, the former US Secretary of State, said, revolution is what happens when we don't see evolutions coming. There is an evolution that is coming, and it is up to each one of us to help each other through, so we make sure AI elevates all of us as opposed to leaving most people behind.
Amazing. And of course, there are so many messages that you left us with. But I think above all, this is for me, like in this age of extraordinary technology, our humanity is not a liability, but it is the leadership advantage. And indeed, AI can help us clarify, prepare, and scale our ideas. But it cannot replace presence, yes, the authenticity, care. Those remains our profoundly human powers, if I may call it this way. And you reminded us that authenticity is not about resisting technology, it is about using it wisely in service of trust, alignment, and connection. So, thank you so much, Alison, for this insight. Our audience definitely will have the book and your website uh, to dive deeply and to use the chatbot. Thank you so much. And if you want and are ever interested, we will be very happy to also do your twin on our twin protocol.
Oh,
Yes,
maybe
so
your
so we
twin
can.
could talk to my twin.
That's right. We can talk to you about that because if you have if you want, I mean, you can also take a look at ours. We also have Einstein, we have Confucius, and so on. We have a
I'd love
plethora
that.
of twins. Yes.
Great.
So yeah, I think that's now the new kid in town is the digital twin. But thank you again, and best of luck in Davos.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Great to speak with you. I so admire you and everything that you do. Thank you for including me.
Dito.